And we are live. I want to thank everybody for coming in to watch live recording of episode 299 of the Polite Society podcast. I want to thank our advertisers, ABN Army Surplus, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, Firearms Safety Institute, and, of course, the Firearms Policy Coalition. We'll be getting going here in just a second. Are we ready to cut the intro then?
I'm ready.
Okay. Coming back in 5. Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Firearms Policy Coalition, recorded live on Sunday, January 4th, 2015. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about a veteran who lost his gun rights due to insomnia.
I'm Rob Morse, and it seems the criminals aren't obeying the new gun laws in Washington State.
I'm Gary Doherty, and tonight we'll interview John Pierce about mental health and losing your right to self-defense. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 299 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Da-da, da-da-da-da-da.
Jack's Discount Sound Effects.
Yep. Wah, 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 wah. All right. Personal news segment. Ready for that?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I offer you a tip?
Yes.
Our listeners can't tell what's at the bottom of your screen, so referring to it as...
Okay. Well, we're going to go Gary, John, Rob.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Coming back in 5. And by the way, the YouTube viewers can. Hey, and welcome back. This is the personal news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our personal news segment, and Gary, man, you're up first today. What's been going on with you since the last time we talked?
Well, I've driven back to Illinois. Managed to knock that out in a couple of days because the snow rolled in today, so we Friday and Saturday did that drive back. I got a little sick.
Okay. How did the new vehicle handle on the trip?
Great. Loved it. Smooth.
Rode like a Cadillac, huh?
Rode like a Cadillac. Yeah, it was great. The tire, of course, doodads, they're the first things to go. The tire pressure sensor is not working on the back tires, so got to get that fixed. But actually, it's not leaking air. We had them checked, so that was all good. Just
Hey, did you on the last podcast? Did you talk about the Frisco Gun Club?
I
did.
Believe I did, yeah.
All right.
I think I've actually been excited for weeks, so I know I've talked about it more than once.
Well, I know you talked about wanting to go. I just didn't hear about you going.
I think I did, because I told you guys about the fireplace and the special dining area and the guy with the cart who comes and gets your guns and all that stuff. I told you all that stuff.
Yeah,
so, I did tell you after the trip.
Concierge gun service.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Everybody should have one.
Paul,
Please, sir, let me load your guns, please.
Get that. Yeah. Okay, Paul, you got to get that podcast out.
Yeah, I'll get that out done. I'll get that done tonight. Inside Baseball for the listeners. We recorded that on New Year's Eve, and it's still not out because I've been hustling my butt to get out.
Making a living is interfering with the podcast. Come on.
I'm telling you, man. I need to. I need to win the lottery so I can do this full time.
There you go.
Next up is John. Man, what's been up with you?
Well, I did my year-end donations to the gun rights organizations, and I also included group that I'd never donated to before, Judicial Watch, because they had done so much
Right.
to break loose all the documents, or as many documents as possible, from Operation Fast and Furious. So I thought, they needed a little something as a thank you. And then yesterday I spent 4, maybe 5 hours working the Grassroots North Carolina booth at a local gun show. Met a lot of interesting people. Unlike most gun shows, I didn't come home with ammo. I just still can't get around to buying CCI 22 bricks of 22 for $72. I'm like, no.
Holy smokes!
Yeah.
And then the guy who was working the booth with me said he just paid $29 for a brick of CCI from Midway. So I'm not going to be. I just don't want to pay that price. But I did come home. I found a rear sight for my Savage 99 that I'm working on restoring, and it's like it was $30. And she's like, you figure, well, geez, the whole gun probably costs $100 new. But what do you do when you're dealing with a gun that's 65 years old? You got to pay when you find the parts. Yeah,
Exactly.
and I'm trying to fight off the beginnings of a cold, so that I'm going to be well for the SHOT Show, which I'll be flying out in 2 weeks. That's kind of amazing that it's here so quickly.
It is coming quick, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been looking at my rifle's a Savage model 304A 3030 bolt action, and as I get older, that the sights get tinier and tinier and tinier. They were never big to begin with, and I've been starting the process of maybe thinking about getting new sights on that thing and what it would take to get that done. Like you, I mean, the rifle's not very. It's a pre-1968, no serial number.
Wow.
And I've been just starting the process of thinking about getting that done, but then again, do you really want to change a pre-1968 gun?
Only if you're going to have it, use it, or shoot it. Why not?
Yeah, I shoot it a lot. It's when I do go deer hunting, that's the gun I use. But regardless, I'm horning in on Rob's time. Rob, what's been up with you, man?
I'm here in donations, and I want to claim that I am a superhero because I gave to all of our good guys. I also gave to John Lott's outfit.
I did the same.
Crime Research Center.
Yep.
You did. Well, then you are my superhero. Some dry practice. As I mentioned it briefly, this gun feels like a whole different animal. I replaced all the springs, and I obviously waited way too long because the ones I took out were much shorter than the ones I put in. And I was trying to figure out how I can remember I buy ammunition in 1,000 to 2,000 round lots, so every other purchase I have to buy a new recoil spring.
Really?
It was an inch shorter, Gary.
In 1,000 or 2,000 rounds?
Well, this probably went 5.
Huh. Okay, because
I called Joe Chetwood to say, Joe, was this a defect from the factory? Am I buying the wrong springs? Acme Cheap Spring Company. I told him the company. I usually put Wolf in.
They're good.
And those are the better springs. He goes, nope. It just, I thought that springs shouldn't yield. He says, yeah, too bad. You're wrong. Replace them.
So is his recommendation every 2,000 or what?
Yeah.
What did he? Huh?
Yeah.
It's kind of like changing your oil, I guess.
Yeah. The poor man's solution, Gary, is buy 2, and periodically when you clean it, compare the 2, and when they start looking different, see if the short one floats. It won't. Oh, time to put in the long one.
Well, I wouldn't call that the poor man's solution. I call that the rich man's solution.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I'm the only reason I'm shocked is because my gunsmith told me that the spring's not really broken into 1,000 plus rounds. So I'm thinking, that's so it's broken in, and then another 1,000 or so is broken down. That's.
I asked Joe if people made flat springs that would be under less stress. He said nope. As far as he knew, there weren't flat springs for the 1911.
There's an idea for some entrepreneurial manufacturer out there.
Indeed. How about you, Paul?
That brings up my turn, and we recorded on New Year's Eve, and I pretty much took New Year's Day off. I spent the day with Susan and got together. My son had a New Year's gathering at his place, and we went out there, spent time with family, and then the day after that, I took off, and as I'm sitting in Baltimore right now, as I have to drop here in the morning, way early in the morning, but not really anything gun-related. Everybody else is mentioning their year-end donations. I didn't do a lot of year-end donations this year. One that I did do that I would like to talk about a little bit, and if anybody's still looking for a place to stuff some money, send some towards Knife Rights. They're doing some great stuff, getting our rights restored on the. They call themselves the Second Front on the Second Amendment, and I sent a little bit of cash their way. So
I agree. They're a good organization.
Yeah, and that and getting ready for SHOT Show, getting really pumped up. I called Susan and I talked about it, and I talked a little bit about this on the New Year's Eve show, but I'm a truck driver, and everybody says, truck drivers, gosh, you get to see the whole country. Well, that's kind of true. I see the whole country from the interstate. I have driven by the Grand Canyon hundreds of times. I have driven over Hoover Dam once, and that's been 25 years ago, and I didn't stop at the time. So since we're driving, we decided to rent the car a day early, and we're going to break the drive down we're going to really hammer it on Thursday, hammer it on Friday. Saturday we're planning on spending the day near the Grand Canyon. Sunday we're going to be inspecting Hoover Dam and checking into the hotel that evening so that on Monday of SHOT Show we're ready for Media Day at the Range.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Combine things like that.
Well, that dam is going to look way different than you remember it if you haven't been there in a year or two.
Well, it's they don't allow big trucks anywhere close to it. Ever since the 9/11 attacks, they will not. You can't get the US 95, which is the road that goes there and goes over the dam. That is US 95, is closed to trucks.
Oh, okay.
I guess I drove across it in 2000, maybe.
It's all different than
I thought you were going to say it looks different because there's so little water behind the dam.
Actually, that's actually was good when I was leaving Vegas, like about 2 or 3 years ago. But 6 years ago, they were really short on water. They were 100 feet down from the peak of the lake. But what I was referring to is the brand new bridge that is this huge suspension bridge going over the river on the downside of the dam, which I'm sure there are trucks going over on that side. So I mean, that's all going to look. It's completely different than the last time you all were there.
Yeah, I didn't even know they had a bridge.
Oh yeah, it's huge, big deal.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out in a couple weeks. So that's what's going on with me, and I think that does wrap up the personal news segment. I do want to mention before we go that we have 3 really cool training classes coming up in Sioux Falls next year. First off, coming up on May 15th and 16th of next year is going to be Ben Branham and and Bob Main coming up to do the Beyond Concealed Carry Enhanced class. And if you haven't there were a bunch of people that did get that $50 discount by ordering their seats before the 1st of January. But we do still have seats available for that class. I do expect it to sell out based on the number of seats that got sold. So you're going to want to get on it and get in touch with Bob over at handgunworld.com and get your seat if you want to get in that class. Coming up August 1st and 2nd, if you want to head over to goodness, I'm having a brain fart. To Nighthawk Custom Training Academy. They're coming up, and they're going to be doing the Citizens Defense class, and then Ken Kowalski's doing medical, and Chaz and John Hodaway are going to be teaching handgun. That's over at God bless America, I can't talk. That's going to be over at I can't. Where I just said it. Where the hell is
Nighthawk Custom?
Nighthawk Custom. Thank you. That's going to be over at NighthawkCustomTraining.com. And then coming up August 15th and 16th, of course, we have Kathy Jackson coming back to Sioux Falls to do another Cornered Cat class. That's going to be a co-ed class. And for that one, if you want seats, and I expect that one to sell out as well. If you want seats for that one, you need to go to Susan at politicsandguns.com. She can let you know everything that's up with that. So let's go ahead and jump off to break then. I've got a lot of editing to do on this show, and we will be back. We'll be back with news right after this. All right. News. You want to just bounce them off between you and I, Rob?
Okay. Leapfrog?
Yeah, I'll take the first one.
One other thing. Okay, when we get down to that one about Mayor Rahm, we'll leapfrog the comments there too.
Okay.
Okay. We have.
If I screw up.
Yeah, we'll just. Who cares? We've
Okay.
got 10. Are we going to split them in the middle or just?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the show we recently put out. I needed an extra segment because I needed slots for ads,
Okay.
and so I split your news into 2 segments on
Right.
that one. I think it went okay, but
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
Hi, curious.
Your Kathy Jackson class is not on her website.
Not yet. No, the only classes on her website are from 2014.
Oh, she hasn't updated yet.
Not yet.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll be talking to her at SHOT Show. She is. It's a challenge getting the email back from her. I will occasionally just call her when I really need something to talk to her, but I'm kind of letting her have her downtime because SHOT Show really kind of starts her year, and I really want to let her, have the downtime before things start kicking up. So, all right, ready for news?
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. Coming back in 5. Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society Podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our news segment, and I'm going to go ahead and take our first news story. Donald Montgomery is a Navy veteran and a veteran police officer with 30 years of service. He rose to the rank of detective sergeant before he retired. He visited a Long Island, New York hospital for treatment of insomnia after he and his wife moved to a new home in the area. New York State Police and a local sheriff's officer knocked on Montgomery's door 5 days later. They seized his 4 registered handguns, including his former duty sidearms. The sheriff said he'd been repeatedly pressured by New York State Police to assist in the raid. Montgomery is suing Governor Cuomo, Eastern Long Island Hospital, the superintendent of state police, and the local sheriff. The sheriff said Montgomery was declared mentally defective. Hospital records say otherwise. Montgomery sought treatment voluntarily. The hospital diagnosed Montgomery as mildly depressed and having trouble sleeping. The record said, quote, patient has no thoughts of hurting himself. Patient has no thoughts of hurting others. Patient is not having suicidal thoughts. Patient is not having homicidal thoughts, unquote. And, quote, there is no evidence of any psychotic processes, mania, or OCD symptoms. Insight, judgment, and impulse control are good, unquote. The hospital psychiatrist told Montgomery, quote, I don't know why you were referred here. You don't belong here, unquote. Montgomery alleges the hospital violated his privacy by transmitting his medical information to the state police without his consent or knowledge. Montgomery subsequently requested a hearing to have his handgun ownership permit reinstated, but the sheriff's department terminated his permit without a hearing. The police also denied Montgomery's Freedom of Information request to see what information has been placed in his file. Both police and the hospital refused to allow him both the police and the hospital refused to allow him to correct any mistakes in his medical record. Our listeners might remember that Governor Cuomo publicly stated that conservatives have no place in the state of New York. I guess retired police officers are now enemies of the state.
Well, go ahead.
This is a huge story. They're violating HIPAA laws. They're transmitting people's information. Everybody who's listening, please pay attention to these stories. Follow up on the outcomes. We will do our best to follow up here. But know what's going on, because this is a big deal.
It is. I wanted to go directly to HIPAA laws because those were coming into effect just as I was losing touch and going away from the medical community. As longtime listeners know, I was a EMT for a long time. I let it lapse a few years after I started driving truck. But I'd been an EMT for a number of years, and HIPAA laws are a big deal. And I don't know of a provision in there that exempts the government or any form of government from HIPAA. So that was my thought, was how to combat Obamacare, and the assault of gun rights through Obamacare was HIPAA laws, but boy, it looks like New York just doesn't care about them.
Didn't Obama sign one of his executive orders or executive memorandums or something to that effect with regard to gun control and HIPAA and notification? I seem to remember something there, and I could be wrong, but something like HIPAA would not apply when the guy was a danger or something like that. Does anybody remember that?
I don't.
Okay. But I would agree with you. Normally, HIPAA, I've seen people fired for violating HIPAA by just saying on Facebook, I saw such and such at the hospital today, or without even naming a name, but it was enough that it was identifiable information, they were fired.
Right.
Fired for cause.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, the psychiatrists have a leeway if they are having homicidal, suicidal thoughts. But this patient record actually goes so far as to say he doesn't. He's not even having those thoughts. So it's a total violation, and
he lost his gun rights because he couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the reason he ended up, you or I would have a GP, we'd call him, talk to him, he'd give us the once-over and say, get some exercise, get plenty of sunlight, you've changed
Here's a prescription for Ambien.
Here's something to help you sleep, that will help you, but you also have to be out and active, that will help your mood. Come and talk to me next week if, Well, if you're brand new to the area, maybe he knows someone at the hospital. Boom.
Yeah. You know, when I seen this story, I thought about making a smart aleck comment, something to the effect of, are you losing sleep worrying about losing your gun rights? Well, that might cause you to lose your gun rights. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's.
Seems a little too serious to quite.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I think we've chewed that one up. What's next, Rob?
There were a number of sexual assaults this summer on and near the campus of the University of Florida, Gainesville. There was also a mass shooting in front of the library at Florida State University in Tallahassee earlier this year. Both areas are called gun-free zones under Florida law. Fortunately, there are now bills in the Florida House and Senate to allow concealed carry on campus. Sean Carana is the executive director of Florida Carry. Sean said this, quote, "Frankly, we have had enough. Too many lives have been lost because of the illusion of safety and security associated with gun-free zones. Where colleges have allowed concealed carry, there has not been a single mass shooting," close quote. On a personal note, I've had a call in for Zachary at Students for Concealed Carry to come on the show and talk to us. Little things like being sick, Christmas break, finals. Come on, Zach. Hopefully we'll get him on the show sometime.
I believe we had somebody from Students for Concealed Carry on. Goodness, it was Gun Rights Policy Conference was down in Orlando. So
you still had hair back then.
I did. Well, so, more than I do now. But yeah, I'd love to have those guys back on the show again. So, well,
okay. What's next, Paul?
The next one is Wendy Davis ran for governor of Texas, and she lost by 20 points. Now the out-of-work politician said she'll probably run for office again. She has a law degree from Harvard. She said she did well fundraising inside and outside of Texas. She said her support of open carry hurt her fundraising efforts from Democrat supporters outside of Texas. Quote, What I do know is that as an elected public servant, I've always been true to my core beliefs. Always. And I'm so proud of that. And this was the only time I felt like I'd strayed a bit from that. Unquote. She wants local preemption so Texas municipalities could make their own gun laws. She also pointed to her votes requiring background checks at gun shows when she was a city councilwoman and her opposition as a senator to allowing guns on college campuses. Davis's Senate district is now held by Tea Party candidate Connie Burton. Well, sounds like she was against it before she was against it.
I think she got a phone call from a bunch of rich New York billionaires who said, "Let me tell you what your new core beliefs are."
There you go. There you go. She fell flat on her face. I mean, that a 20-point loss, that's almost a career ender there.
She did a lot wrong in that campaign. Telling her Greg Abbott, governor-elect, or I guess he's sworn in now, like he needed to stand up, and like the guy's in a wheelchair.
Bad joke.
No. But we never knew her as gun rights Barbie. We knew her as some other sort of Barbie, but it wasn't gun rights.
The action that propelled her to public prominence was a filibuster in the Texas Senate when they went to reduce abortion funding going to Planned Parenthood. Other than that, she would have been a no-name.
Okay. Well, let's do this. We're coming up on break, so let's go ahead and step aside for break here fast, and we've got more news to get to when we come back right after this. I know we weren't quite to story number 5, but with John coming on, I wanted to.
Has he pinged anybody? Did he say anything?
In the hangout.
He said hello.
I don't think I actually said hello, but hello.
Oh,
Hey, John.
Oh, awesome.
it sounded like hello. It sounded yo or hello, something.
How you doing, John? Glad you
Good.
could make it.
Good. How's the sound quality?
You're sounding good to me.
Excellent.
The tin can and a string all the way to the fiber optic connection, perfect.
Gotta love that 50 megabyte per second fiber optic.
There you go. Okay, Paul, should I? Okay, John, twixt you and I, have any changes on what we'd like to talk about since this morning?
No, if it still works for you guys, I guess what I thought we'd talk about is, the big picture surrounding mental health and gun rights, and then the Sixth Circuit opinion, and then flowing right into the police officer with the insomnia, who provides kind of a counterpoint to the general rule that we don't want people with mental health issues having firearms, and talk a little bit about the reasoning from the Sixth Circuit decision.
Okay. Just a heads up, this sounds like it's probably going to go more than one segment, so I'm just going to jump in at 15 minutes and throw it a break, and breaks are just, we can start right up again, but I just want to get my...
Well, since this is my first time in a Google Hangout, just tell me this. If I flip to another tab on my browser, you guys continue to be able to see and hear me, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Just in case I need to refer over to the opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
It is not like putting a washcloth in front of a child's face and they see you disappeared. No. Going on to another page. We're still watching and listening to you, John.
Well,
You
I
can't
didn't
hide
know
that.
I didn't know if the ActiveX control or whatever is handling the Hangout would lose focus when you move the tab.
No, if you close the tab, we're gone.
Okay. I'll do my best not to close the tab.
There you go.
All right. Rob, you want to give us a 5-second and bring us in?
5. Hi, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast. This is our interview segment, and we're fortunate to have John Pierce with us again. John's going to talk with us about current issues that are really a bit uncomfortable to discuss for gun owners. We have let's call it a love-hate relationship hearing about mental health and firearms owners. It's recently been in the courts. It's recently been in the news. John, I think we were going to start with some decisions coming out of the 6th U.S. Circuit.
Yes, there was a recent case, and I'm sure a lot of people who are familiar with gun rights and who subscribe to different mailing lists have already heard about this opinion. But it was an interesting opinion involving a gentleman who had been adjudicated to have some mental health issues 28 years ago. And he challenged the fact that he was banned from being able to own firearms based upon a mental health issue that occurred 28 years ago, which had not subsequently occurred again. And so in his case, the courts held that as applied to him, and this was only an as-applied challenge, but as applied to him, this case the law prohibiting his ability to own firearms was unconstitutional. There were several things that made this case sort of unique. Some states have a process by which someone who has been adjudicated mentally incapacitated or incompetent or has been hospitalized can petition the courts for a restoration of their gun rights. That's the case here in Virginia. However, in his case, I believe it was Michigan, they do not have such a process. So once you're on that list, you effectively have a lifelong prohibition unless you're willing to move to another state. And so it is important that people understand this was an as-applied challenge. This did not strike down the federal law in general. What it said is, as applied to this gentleman, the law is unconstitutional. And so what that does do is two things. One, it gives hope to other people who are similarly situated. And number two, some of the language out of the opinion actually was not just addressing mental health issues, but actually talked about level of scrutiny for evaluating Second Amendment cases, and had some really amazing language that said, when you've got a ban, it's got to be strict scrutiny.
John, before you go on into the and talk about levels of scrutiny there, what sort of actions could produce a lifetime ban? Meaning, you might get your rights restored for what other sort of events?
Well, there are three kinds of events generally that are going to strip you of your right to own firearms, potentially for life. The first thing that can strip you of your rights to own firearms for life is a conviction for an offense for which you could have been sentenced for more than a year. Generally, people refer to that as the felony ban, but the wording of it is a little bit different, and we have seen problems in certain states that have common law offenses with that. And then number two is people who have been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. And then number three, those who have been adjudicated mentally incompetent or incapacitated, or who have been involuntarily committed to a mental health institution.
Now, my local sheriff might ask me if I have any problems with addiction. But if someone was a recovering alcoholic and had shown himself, that wouldn't produce a lifetime ban, would it?
Well, it depends on whether or not they had. Well, first of all, there are some states that prevent certain things if you voluntarily seek, a substance abuse treatment in an inpatient setting. In Virginia, for example, it doesn't affect your ability to possess firearms, but if you have sought inpatient voluntary treatment for substance abuse problems, you cannot get a concealed carry permit for 5 years after that. And now, it doesn't affect your ability to possess or to open carry, but it does affect your ability to get a concealed carry permit. It's my understanding there are other states that have similar prohibitions. They may be more strict, but I couldn't quote chapter and verse on that to you.
And you don't practice in every state. I understand that.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you, because there's some rumors I've heard around the gun range about, oh, this guy used to drink. Now I know what the truth is. Back to scrutiny. What exactly does it mean if mental health provisions have to meet strict scrutiny?
Well, and I'm glad you asked the question the way you just did, because that's actually a very important thing. But before I go on, the thing you mentioned about at the range, about you'd heard rumors someone used to drink and now they're prohibited from owning guns. Certain states still have a process that they call adjudicating someone as an habitual drunkard.
Really?
And that also can prohibit you, in Virginia, for example, from getting a concealed carry permit. So that's actually, there's another thing that comes into play in many common law states in that regard. But anyway, going back to scrutiny, I just wanted to throw that in there because it popped into my mind.
Sure. Thank you.
Going back to your question about scrutiny, the court did not hold that mental health issues are subject to strict scrutiny where firearms are concerned. What the court actually held was that when an outright ban is involved and you have an as-applied challenge, that they have to meet strict scrutiny. And that was the majority opinion. There was a concurring opinion that argued that, in fact, they shouldn't have even discussed scrutiny and that intermediate scrutiny was more appropriate. But the majority opinion held that, in this case, you're talking about a lifetime ban. It's not just a regulation. It's not regulating a type of firearm, but all firearms. We need to satisfy strict scrutiny. And they went on to say the real meat of this is that when the court held that when Congress passed these laws banning the possession of the simple ownership and possession of firearms by those who have been adjudicated mentally incompetent or incapacitated or involuntarily committed, they did not envision this being a lifetime ban. And the reason for that is there is a restoration process. It's been defunded for many years by Congress, but it was passed in the initial bill. And they said because of that, this was never envisioned to be a lifetime ban. It was envisioned that during the period of time when someone is determined to be to have a mental health issue, it would be a complete ban. But when they were able to demonstrate that they were no longer suffering from a mental health issue, that they would be able to regain those rights. And the fact that that is no longer available at the federal level and in this particular state wasn't available at the state level, that's unconstitutional.
This was in Michigan, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was.
So let me ask you a question here, John. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was remembering the defunding brought about by now Senator Charles Schumer. So if you have your rights restored at the state level but not at the federal level, can you still possess a firearm?
You can, because the federal the enabling regulations state that a state restoration, and you have to be very clear about this because I do restorations here in Virginia, a state restoration that fully returns your gun rights to you will also remove the federal prohibition. And that last part is very important, whether it's a criminal, a felony conviction that you're getting restored or a mental health adjudication that you're having restored. Because let's say the judge says, I think that I would trust your client to go hunting. I'm going to restore their rights to own shotguns and rifles, but I'm not going to restore their rights to own handguns. If they did that, then the federal prohibition stands because that is a conditional restoration and that does not restore your federal rights. But if it is an unconditional state restoration, then that removes the federal prohibition as well. Okay. However, here is the key thing that people need to understand, and I run into clients that run afoul of this all the time. Let's say that, I've got a client that 30 years ago was adjudicated mentally incapacitated in Virginia. I get their rights fully restored in Virginia. They get a Virginia concealed handgun permit. That Virginia concealed handgun permit is good in Tennessee. They think, okay, I can go to Tennessee with my gun. That is not true. We have removed the federal prohibition. We have removed Virginia's prohibition. But Tennessee, I'm using this as an example. I don't know what the law is in Tennessee. But assuming that Tennessee has a law that says you can't possess firearms if you've been adjudicated mentally incapacitated, then just because the feds and Virginia gave your rights back, Tennessee doesn't have to recognize that. So rights restoration is a state-by-state process, and people need to remember that. People run into problems all the time.
So quite literally, to have your rights, air quotes here, fully restored, you have to go file a claim for restoration in all 50 states, John?
If you wanted to have the right to possess a firearm in all those states, and again, I'm assuming that every state is going to have some version of this prohibition. If they didn't, it wouldn't matter. But let's say, for argument's sake, that all 50 states have a law that says possession of a firearm by someone adjudicated mentally incapacitated is a crime. just because Virginia restored their rights doesn't mean Washington State has restored their rights. So if you went to Washington State, you would still be a prohibited person until you went through their process.
Wow.
And furthermore, a lot of states will only allow you to petition if you're a resident.
Mhm.
That brings up a question I had about, we are a very mobile society. Let's say somebody in Wisconsin's adjudicated as mentally incompetent, and they move to, say, Virginia. A number of years go by. Can they apply in Virginia to get their rights back that were removed in Wisconsin, or do they need to do it in Wisconsin first?
Well, again, that's going to be a matter of state law, but in Virginia, they could petition in Virginia because Virginia is the state that has the interest in determining whether or not they're a danger to themselves or others. So they would petition in the circuit court of the jurisdiction where they reside in Virginia. But again, that's going to be based upon state law. So that answer might be different in other states. And I'll give you a great example of that. North Carolina. North Carolina says if you were convicted of a felony, you can, in another state, and you've subsequently moved to North Carolina, you have to get your rights restored in the state where the conviction occurred. Then you can apply in North Carolina to have them restored 20 years after they were restored in the other state.
Wow.
Whoa! Holy cow!
We don't want none of you felons here.
Well, I mean, that's a rather extreme example, and again, I don't practice in North Carolina, but I had a client who had done just that, and that was the answer that came back from the North Carolina attorney that they had retained there, and I helped them with their Virginia restoration, but they showed me the code section. You're required to wait 20 years after having them restored in the other jurisdiction before you can ask to have them restored in North Carolina.
Well, I do remember a case not that in the last couple of years in North Carolina where our state Supreme Court said that if you had been convicted of a nonviolent felony, you did not have to suffer a lifetime ban. You could get your rights restored.
And that may impact how that particular statutory code is interpreted. As I said, I always start off anytime I talk about other states' laws with the disclaimer that I don't practice there. But that's kind of, because that, at least at one time, that statute was the intent of the legislature, it kind of shows how broad a pattern that we have in the 50 states in terms of letting nonviolent felons and people who fall into the mental health system. And I guess that's kind of where we were going to go next, is we were going to talk about the fact that, you know, there are many people who suffer violent ideation or other things that we don't want to have firearms, but there are people who fall through the cracks, and I think we're going to talk about them here in a minute.
Paul, do we need to go to a break?
Yes, sir, we do. We're coming up on that time. We're going to be coming back to this, so it's fascinating, and so we will be doing more with John right after this. Okay.
I want to pull him back because I want to keep him from moving on till I. John, how can a court say we've reached this ruling, but it only applies in one case? What does that really mean? Okay,
well,
I'll ask you when we come back.
All right, sounds good.
Are we recording, Paul?
Just give me the word.
5, 4. Hi, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our second segment with John Pierce, and things are getting crazier by the minute as we talk about mental health issues. John, I don't understand something. How can a court issue a ruling that says our ruling only applies in one case?
Well, it's called an as-applied challenge, and you see this in constitutional law areas. And basically, what the argument is not a facial challenge to the law stating the entire law is unconstitutional, which is a pretty high bar to pass. But it says, in my circumstances, here are the facts of my individual circumstances. And because of one or more broad interpretations that are built into this statute, it encompasses activity that really it is unconstitutional. It is an overreach in my case. And oftentimes that is the best way for someone to attack this, because it doesn't require the courts to strike down a law. They simply say, as applied to this person, or this is unconstitutional. So it still requires individual, appellants to state their case if they want to follow a similar result. But one of the things that courts do not like to do is they don't like to be the one that threw down an entire law or an entire regulatory scheme. But so as applied challenges are definitely an easier path for someone that has a unique circumstance, as we saw here, the 28 years, the exemplary life after the one hospitalization, etc.
What does it mean for an individual who's similarly situated? Someone else who's in the Sixth Circuit 20 years ago had a mental health issue. Does he now have to sue at the Sixth Circuit to and ask to get his rights restored, and then they would refer back to this case?
Well, someone similarly situated and who happened to be in the same circuit would be in a really good spot. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that we're talking the Sixth Circuit, because circuit court rulings have precedential value. Although, again, this is an as-applied, so it's not a binding precedent, but it has precedential value for other cases in that circuit. As far as in sister circuits, it only has, it has no real precedential value. It can be cited, though, as logic that the court might adopt. But if they take a differing stand, then you have what we call a circuit split, and whenever you have circuit splits, that's when you can potentially ask the Supreme Court to get involved. But going back to your original question, someone else similarly situated in the Sixth Circuit, they would, in fact, have to bring a case on their own, also as an as-applied challenge to this, before they would be able to avail themselves of this ruling.
So, and that would have to start perhaps with the local sheriff who refused to issue, then the district, then up to the circuit.
Yeah, well, yes, you'd need to have standing in order to take it to court, but you'd start it in the federal district court.
Wow. Okay, you were going to jump into this latest example, I think in New York?
Correct. And as I said right before the break, those of us in the pro-gun movement, every time we have one of these tragic events, it seems that it always goes back to the same thing. It's people who have mental health issues. Where, law-abiding gun owners are not the ones that commit crimes with guns or atrocities with guns. And so it's very easy for us when we talk about solutions after the fact. One of the things we say is we all want to make sure those who are who have current mental health issues should not have firearms. But we have to be very careful to not let that get any broader than necessary. And the reason is because when you draw these broad rules, people are going to fall into categories that we don't really intend. And there's a great example out of New York right now. A retired veteran, a retired police officer, began to suffer insomnia. Insomnia is not a mental health issue. It's a physical issue. He simply could not get to sleep. And so he went to his physician. They tried a couple of different sleeping pills with him. Apparently those didn't work. He went back and said, these aren't working. I'm still not sleeping. It's really affecting my health. And so they hospitalized him to look at that, and they categorized it as insomnia, depression. And in doing that, his records got entered into the database, that triggered the SAFE Act, and he found himself with his firearms confiscated and his right to own firearms removed, even though this was not an adjudication of mental incompetence, not an adjudication of incapacitation. He was not involuntarily committed for mental health treatment, and even under the SAFE Act, which is a horrible piece of legislation in New York, which expands that at the state level, he was not found to be a danger to himself or others. It was right there in his chart, and yet he got swept up in this, and he's having a horrible time getting his name removed from this database.
Well, if I could, we talked about this we talked about this story just before we started interviewing you. And one question we had that I'd like to bring up to you, if I could, John, is the HIPAA laws. Speaking as somebody that did work in the medical field a while back, and I got out of it just as HIPAA was becoming a very big deal, my understanding of the HIPAA laws is there's no exception for anybody, including governments. How has that gotten around in place in cases like the SAFE Act?
That's actually a really good question, and one of the law journals that I subscribe to had an article about HIPAA laws and how they work with the reporting to the various databases having to do with federal law. And to be honest, I have not read that article yet. And that's a very fascinating interplay of law there, and maybe we at some point we could do a discussion about that when I've actually read it and have a better answer for you. But I know at one time there was a discussion that the federal that Congress was going to have to change federal law in order to allow for those changes to occur. This was after I believe it was Sandy Hook, and I honestly don't know if that piece of legislation passed to add those exemptions or not. I seem to recall that it did, but we ought to have a discussion about that sometime.
Very cool.
John?
Yes.
Okay. So does the SAFE Act have misnamed safeguards to say, oh, you've been swept up by accident, or is this like getting on a no-fly list and it's going to take an act of Congress to get yourself back off?
Well, if you recall, the SAFE Act was one of those that was kind of passed in the middle of the night in order, and it didn't even actually satisfy the statutory waiting period, if you will, that New York has regarding legislation to make sure that people have a chance to read it. And so it's my understanding that it does not currently have the built-in due process to allow people to challenge their inclusion on it. So I believe he's going to simply have to do this through the courts.
Gotcha. Okay. If his rights were violated, would that, again, depending on how the court ruled, would everyone who's mistakenly prosecuted under the law have to sue to get their rights restored, or would they be able to file charges against the people, the individuals who denied them a civil right?
I don't think you'd find that. In this case, he is being prohibited by a state law, not by the federal prohibition, because his insomnia hospitalization doesn't meet the federal requirement. Although I suspect they've reported him to the federal database, but actually, I don't believe he satisfies the federal requirement. So it's a state law that is prohibiting him from owning firearms. And if he were to win a case against them for inadvertently placing him on that list, I suspect it also would be in the realm of an as-applied challenge. In my case, it's wrong. It would not strike down that provision of the SAFE Act. And since we're talking New York here, I would believe that the chances of anyone who is violating someone's rights being held accountable for it is somewhere between 0 and 1.
We keep talking about whoever they are who submitted this information, John. I'm just curious, do we really know who it was? Was it a do-gooding mom from the hospital who submitted this information? Was it the psychiatrist? How or is it a mandatory process? Do you know anything about how that actually happened?
It was a organization called the Mental Hygiene Legal Service in New York, which is a group that provides legal services to individuals who have mental disabilities. What happened is, apparently the hospital sends records over to this organization, and then this organization is one of the reporting organizations for the state. So ultimately it was someone at the hospital who included his name, potentially thinking that he might need some free services from this third-party organization, and all of a sudden now he's reported.
Wow.
And again, that raises the question about HIPAA again, and I don't really know how they have the authority to share his information with that organization either. There might have been a waiver of something that occurred during the admittance process. I just don't know.
All right, well, we are coming up on break again, and I want to, real quick, if you could, I know you're a big, you're part of opencarry.org, right?
Yes.
And also, now when we last had you on, when I last talked to you, it's been a while since I've been able to talk to you. Rob's had you on a couple times that I haven't been able to join in, but I'd always enjoyed reading your blog. And I know I butcher it every time I say it. Monachus Lex.
Monachus Lex, yeah.
Monachus. Okay, my apologies. Have you been able to update that lately? I haven't been able to check it out in the last few weeks. What's been going on with your online activities?
Well, I write a lot at my law practice blog, which is just at johnpierceesq.com, and so much of my time is focused with my law practice these days. It's actually been several months since I posted something to Monachus Lex. It is not a dead project by any means. Once I get caught up, I do plan on continuing to write there. But probably the last thing you read is the last thing that I put out there.
Okay. All right. Well, John, I do want to thank you for joining us today. We do have to run off to break, but I know it's not going to be long before we have you back on again, man.
I really appreciate coming on every time. It's a real honor. I wish you and your families and all your listeners a very happy New Year.
Same to you, and we'll be right back right after this. Awesome. I thought that was a hell of a good discussion.
Thank you, John.
No problem. And at some point, we do need to have that discussion about HIPAA. I just don't know the answer to that. That's an excellent question.
Right.
Well, it's as somebody that used to be, I used to be an EMT, and it was a major thing with the people I worked with was HIPAA, and we had countless training sessions on it. Even as somebody, I mean, come on, I drove an ambulance, and I worked in a volunteer fire department. Not exactly, I wasn't heavily involved, but it's.
You couldn't say, "Guess who I found drunk tonight?" Right?
Exactly.
No. Nay.
Exactly. So we'll talk about that sometime, and I'll gather the information beforehand, and we can talk about anything that's happened.
Hey,
and I
John,
really, we've got to. Every time I talk to you, I say it, but I really want you to talk sometime about the Class 3 stuff. The what do you call it? The
Trust.
NFA.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I'm always glad to talk about that. You know, that's really where I live with my law practice these days. So yeah, anytime.
Are you going to be out at? I would be kind of surprised if you are, but I'm going to shoot it anyway. Are you going to be out at SHOT Show?
You know, I every year I promise myself I'll go, but I don't know that I'm going to be there this year with everything else that's going on. You know, on the 19th we have our big lobby day here in Virginia where we take, you know, hundreds and thousands, hopefully, of gun owners to the General Assembly, and we all go in. We go in, you know, a lot of people go in carrying, and we have our Gun Save Lives stickers, and we drop off our position papers to all the legislators, and that's our big day. And so I don't know if I'll get to go to SHOT or not. I literally swear to myself every year that next year it is, but right now I don't have any tickets bought. Let's put it that way.
Okay. NRA show in the spring then?
Yeah, that's Indianapolis this year, right? Or no, it's Texas. Nashville, that's right. Yes, I'm definitely going to be there.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, well, we should probably get back into news and get the rest of this show laid down. So, but thanks again, John, for joining us, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And it's always a pleasure to be on. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, John.
Alrighty.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Now go back to my tab that's got the show notes up.
All right.
Looks like you get the next story coming back, Rob. You want to bring us in?
Sure. You ready?
And let's just go ahead and run all. If it goes over 15, it goes over 15.
From
let's
here,
just go all the way
through to the end.
Yeah.
5. Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our second news segment, and we're starting off with something about the Reuters news service. They ran what I'll call a clickbait headline. They said gun deaths by police rose 56% this year. Well, really? Let's put that into perspective. Take out the accidental deaths, the suicides, we're left with 50 officers killed in 2014. That's a tragedy. That's up from only 32 killed in 2013. But it's down dramatically from the 68 officers killed in 2011. We're seeing variations in small numbers year to year. Roughly speaking, and over a longer trend, the homicide rate for police officers is about 15% higher than for the general public. Blue lives matter, just like everyone else's.
Yeah, they do.
It kind of goes to show that when you talk in relative terms, you can make something sound really scary.
Yeah, did you know the population in my house doubled the day my child was born?
Wow.
Doubled.
Yes, just like that sort of stuff. Gets crazy if you don't pay attention.
I would have thought it would have went up by a third, but doubled. Did you have twins?
No, my wife was in the hospital for an extra day.
Oh, okay.
It dropped by 1, then went up by 1.
Yeah, I don't want to sound anti-police. I really don't, because I'm not. However, at a rate of 15% higher than the general population, I would think it possibly that there are other jobs such as convenience store clerks, taxi drivers,
Yes.
others that might be a higher rate even than that. So,
Well, and let's put it in perspective. I've met a number of police officers who said, you don't understand, they call me when some guy absolutely needs somebody to come up and lay on hands. Police officers in too many examples, get in a fight every day. That has to be hard on their souls. Thank goodness most of them show tremendous restraint. Fortunately, most policemen will retire from the force without ever firing their firearm on patrol.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no doubt police see the worst of society because they don't get involved until something goes wrong.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, we do have mixed news from Michigan. Governor Schneider vetoed bills that would have exempted air guns from Michigan firearms laws. That leaves us and our children at risk for owning a BB gun. The governor's staff said he did not sign a bill making Michigan shall issue and getting rid of the county gun boards. The state legislature's website says he signed the bill. I hope the governor signs both bills, but rhinos have disappointed us way too many times before we count. We hope the governor does sign both bills, but rhinos have disappointed us way too many times before for us to count on them.
It's odd. When I was reading the news articles about this, the NRA, the Michigan firearms group said, hey, he signed it. And then other news reports came in, no, we talked to his staff. They said the governor didn't sign it. We'll have to wait till Monday to find out what the truth is.
And each state is different. Some states, like South Dakota, if the governor does not sign it, it's a veto.
Oh, that's right.
In some states, if the governor, like New Jersey, if the governor doesn't sign it, it becomes law without his signature after a certain amount of time.
Interesting.
So, and I don't know which side Michigan's on.
Comedian Jeff Foxworthy and singer Alan Jackson are scheduled to provide entertainment at the 2015 NRA annual meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. Shannon Watts and her Moms Demand Action are trying to bully Foxworthy and Jackson into canceling their appearances. On their Facebook page, they wrote, Alan Jackson and Jeff Foxworthy agreed to open this year's NRA convention after the NRA pushed to arm convicted criminals, blocked federal gun violence research, and the board members promoted armed insurrection. Let's educate these celebrities on the dangerous and irresponsible policies the gun lobby supports. Close quote. Katie Pavlich thinks that Jeff Foxworthy will end up using Moms Demand Action as part of his routine for their laughable efforts.
I would agree. And, I think our listeners would find it ironic that a group that should be against bullying, moms, engages in it at every opportunity. Witness their blackmail campaigns against a number of restaurants, Chipotle, and I could go on, Jay Leno, and Kroger grocery stores. And it seems that lately, only Kroger has shown any sort of spine, though I do expect Jeff Foxworthy and Alan Jackson to have a bit more of a spine than Jay Leno.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, John, it's worked for them. They've done a pretty good job of screaming from the rooftops and having people that are celebrities that. Let's face it, Jay Leno is not exactly. I don't know where he's from, but he's lived in L.A. for a long time, and
he's from Massachusetts.
Oh, there's a bastion of gun rights right there.
Here's what I was thinking, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Bullying works, and all they have to do is convince the media. They don't have to convince the grassroots. These guys are AstroTurf and just need to put a little gloss on what would you call it? Let's call it Photoshop journalism.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good term. I like that.
And they would say that, well, we got Starbucks to ban guns in their stores. Except Starbucks did not ban guns in their stores. They said we discourage our patrons from carrying in our stores. We do not ban them, and we will not ask our employees to confront anybody carrying in our stores.
But that's not what appeared in the media. The media ran with the press release.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
And this just, and I want to bring up one more time, just, and John did earlier, kudos to Kruger and their many different brands of grocery stores and other stores for actually having the guts to stand up.
You betcha.
Well, yeah, let me just yell back at them for 1 second, that these bullies. Please, everybody, when you're speaking for gun rights, speak the truth. The truth. These lies, this made up, the NRA is arming criminals and all that craziness. It has to eventually blow up in their face. Stick with the truth. And preach the truth and get the word out to your friends and neighbors. The press is listening to them right now, and for the foreseeable future they will. So we have to do it person to person.
Preach it, Gary. Say amen, Gary.
I'm just saying.
Well, it's like that old saying, always tell the truth because it's a lot easier than trying to have to remember your lies.
All your lies.
Amen.
Oh, speaking of Chicago politicians.
Yes. Speaking of Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel thinks guns are bad if you have them. Guns are great if he has them. The mayor has a sign outside his house telling mere citizens that the house is guarded by armed Secret Service agents as well as the Chicago police.
Paul, mayors don't usually get Secret Service protection. That's for the president and federal officials?
Yeah, but they do if they once worked for Barack Obama.
Ah.
Also, the totals for the mere citizens of the gun-free paradise of Chicago are in. In 2014, there were 388 people shot and killed. 2,231 people were shot and wounded. You see, the difference is they don't get Secret Service protection.
Wow. That's a lot of wounded victims.
I want to encourage everybody to go look at our show notes when this episode pops up. We have a picture, courtesy of Fox 32 in Chicago, that shows the sign right outside good old Rahm's house that says, stay away unless you want to meet the Secret Service in person.
This area is protected by the United States Secret Service.
But you know that didn't protect his kid who got shaken down for his iPhone.
Out on the
reported
street.
on that 2 or 3 weeks ago.
But isn't the Secret Service new since that incident?
That I don't know.
I thought because this popped up in the press that it was new since the mugging of his son.
So
I could be wrong.
maybe the Chicago police detail that he has guarding him wasn't good enough?
Yeah, that was my impression when I heard the story, was that this was an additional amount of protection for his house.
You know, it must be nice to be able to call your friend with a that wields the phone and pen and just get, you know, your own Secret Service. I wonder how much that's costing us. Because it looks like a 24/7 thing, and Secret Service doesn't come cheap. And
That's probably $1 million a year.
well, I would think, at least.
And you got to pay for a place for them to stay while they're in detail in Chicago.
Yeah.
Well,
there's
maybe
no place
Rahm
to
has a
stay
big
there
enough
cheap.
Yeah, maybe he has a big enough house they can just take up the second spare bedroom.
Oh, no. They can go to Obama's mansion that he's not living in.
Yeah,
There you go.
You guys are dreaming. Let's press on.
it's gonna be before we do. It's gonna be a little expensive because his mansion isn't Obama's mansion in Hawaii. Oh, that's the second. Okay, forget it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
On to the next article. We're going to be serious here, I promise.
Sometime.
Someday. They were frustrated in their efforts to enact gun control at the national level. So the gun prohibitionists are turning their eyes on the states. according to a recent New York Times story. Following the victory for I-594 in Washington State, gun controllers are now looking at up to 20 more states for ballot initiatives. The Brady campaign views Maine, Oregon, Arizona as the states where they could have the most success. This is on top of the effort in Nevada. While these campaigns are expensive, they now can depend upon the deep pockets of Michael Bloomberg and other billionaires. John Feinblatt of Everytown said, whether it's on guns or immigration or tax reform, clearly, Washington is broken. You have to influence the federal government at the state level.
You know, that we should take this as a warning to everyone that we need to be aware, we need to know what's going on at the state level, and that we also need to join our state level organizations. In my case, it'd be Grassroots North Carolina. They would keep track of it, or help keep track of it.
Right.
Amen.
They do all. Illinois Carry here does
Illinois
post
Carry, Illinois State Rifle Association.
any new laws that are presented. So they have people that actually track that stuff, and anytime something new comes up, it's posted. So yeah, join your organizations, know what's going on.
And again, not to sound like I'm pushing our own sponsors, but I'm pushing one of our sponsors. Go to firearmspolicycoalition.org. There's a huge list of state-level organizations that are a part of them. That and you're bound to find one near you. If you like, South Dakota doesn't have one, just a state-level NRA. So me, I'm a member of NJ2AS. Another sponsor, but you know.
I donated to several California gun rights organizations. I'm bragging. It's true.
Well, you know, I
Rob's a
gave a
superhero.
contribution to Cowguns Foundation.
Ah, thank you.
But what's interesting is, at least for the time being, they have lost their 503c3 designation.
501c3, yeah.
501c3 designation, supposedly due to the fact that they didn't send in their tax return in 2009, even though they did.
Ugh.
Do you remember how the IRS was making
Targeting?
public the lists of the donors to conservative organizations?
Oh, yeah.
Kamala Harris is doing that.
Yeah.
So
And-
a lot of she's been saying, "Oh, you guys didn't give us your donor list," and they go, "That's right, you don't need them."
Well, I'm just thinking 2009, you didn't get our tax return. It probably would have gone through Cincinnati. Lois Lerner, give me
Yeah.
a break.
Exactly.
You know, Lois Lerner can lose how many years of emails, and yet one tax return gets misplaced, and all of a sudden, since it's on the other side of the computer screen, bad things happen.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, the next story, they promised us that criminals would obey the law now that voters passed Washington Initiative 594. Unfortunately, the robbers get a vote more than rich gun control advocates. 3 men robbed a car at gunpoint in West Seattle. The robbers demanded wallets and phones, then pointed a gun at the driver when the 3 occupants complained. Thank goodness they didn't hand the gun back and forth, or they'd be guilty of a new firearms crime.
Guys, have you heard this sort of bizarre, latest victimology called microaggression?
Actually, I have. And I do have a comment on that, but I'll let you finish up first.
Well, so here we are. We ignore that there are violent criminals on our streets while we criminalize non-violent gun owners. That's crazy. John,
You know-
what were you thinking?
Well, and it was one I read recently, and it was so absurd. It had basically said that men pass gas loudly and therefore force women to be submissive to them, and it's called fart raping.
Oh, God.
I kid you not. Do a Google search on it,
That
and
guys
you'll
like
read this thing.
burritos more than ladies do?
I'm sorry. Say again, Paul.
I was just saying, could it just maybe be that a lot of guys eat more burritos than women do?
That's what I was going to go. But obviously, I'm not sufficiently sensitive.
But it was just so absurd. But I agree with you about microaggression and check your privilege and all the rest of this nonsense.
We have people cutting off other people's heads, and some people get upset that one college bought, I think, a soda machine where parts were made in Israel. I'm sorry, you got to check your victimology.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, I do want to mention.
This all goes back to just trying to destroy gun culture. They don't care that these laws that are passed don't stop crime. They don't stop criminals. They stop us. And they stop us from going shooting with the neighbor, taking a friend out, taking the kids out, the kids being not interested in hunting, not having anything to do with guns. They're making it a taboo subject, so it is falling out. We talked about this an episode or two ago. They are making it so that it's such a pain to do that nobody wants to do it, and they're just trying to destroy the culture, therefore reducing the fight and trying to win the battle.
Death by paper cut.
Yep.
Well, our last story, author Brian Aiken is having a book signing Tuesday, the 20th of January. I might get the show edited and out by then. The event is at the BMW Hall in Whippany, New Jersey. Check the NJ2AS website for details. That's NJ2AS.com.
I want to remind our listeners that I met Brian Aitken in person. I've been fortunate to interview him here on the podcast. I've donated to his fundraising campaigns. I received a complimentary copy of his book. Now, the way Brian wrote the story, he's trying to be even-handed and even, I'll call it lighthearted, so that his book is readable. But speaking personally, I find the book hard to read because I am outraged by how he was treated. I can read a chapter and then I have to put it down for a day because I like Brian and I respect him. So you do want to get a chance to meet him. If you live anywhere in the New York City area, go meet him in person.
Yeah, I don't know how you pick it back up in a day. I get so upset. It sits there. I don't go back to it for a while.
I'm older than you are. I forget things faster.
Metaphor.
All right, Gary, I think you got our gun quote, right?
I do. Every decent man is ashamed of the government he lives under. That comes from H.L. Mencken.
And for our younger listeners, Henry Louis Mencken was an American journalist, essayist, magazine editor, a superb satirist, and social critic. He died the year I was born.
All right, well, that does it for our news segment. Hang on, everybody. We'll be right back with DGUs right after this.
Do you want to say that again, where you actually say that we'll be back with interviews?
We'll be back with the interview. All right, here we go. Sorry, I had...
brain fart.
Well, pop went down the wrong pipe. I was struggling to find my mute
Was
button.
that one of those microaggression brain farts, or was that
Yes.
just... Yeah, okay.
Very much so. All right, well, that does it for our news segment. We've got an interview with John Pierce coming up, and we'll get to that right after this. All right. Doc got it, wrong pipe on that soda. Wow. I need a cigarette to clear that out.
Of course you do.
DGUs, are we ready to kick this off?
Yeah, Gary, do you want to read any of these?
I really don't have any wind today. I can barely breathe.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
Well, like I said, I started on bronchitis medicine yesterday mornings. I mean, the antibiotics. So I'm really roughing it. So
Thank you for being on the show.
All right, Rob, you want to bring us in then, since you got the first one?
5. Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast. This is our DGU segment. This first story is from Detroit, Michigan. A 44-year-old man and a 40-year-old woman had stopped and were sitting in their car early on New Year's Eve. 2 men approached the car. The intruders pointed a shotgun at the couple and demanded their wallets and keys. The man in the car has his concealed carry license, and he was carrying at the time. He shot one robber in the chest. The second robber dragged his accomplice back to their waiting car and drove him to the hospital. The second robber abandoned his friend at the hospital and then ran away on foot. The 23-year-old robber was pronounced dead.
I gotta say, if they were in their car. Now the guys approach, and if you're at shotgun point, I mean, normally I say, yeah, hit the throttle, get out of there. Your car is a much better weapon than your gun. However, if they've already got the shotgun pointing at you, wow, good job on the part of the concealed carry couple, and and just another case of you real good quality people here. A guy abandons his buddy at the hospital and runs off on foot.
I am the lame exception in our group. I compete, but I don't carry in a car. I can't do that in California. This reminds me that presenting while seated in your car could be an extremely valuable skill to have.
I know in the truck I can draw from a seated position quite easily. In the pickup, it's a little bit more challenging, shall we say. I do a little bit of seated yoga trying to get. I have practiced it, but I've always fallen back on my belief that your cars or pickup or big truck or howitzer or whatever you're driving is a better weapon than your handgun. And that should be your first choice. And the exception is, of course, maybe I can say this, that they needed to possibly. It's hard for us on these because we only get the news reports of the story. Pay better attention. Maybe if they'd seen the people approaching before the shotgun came up, they could have got out of there.
Paul, it was New Year's Eve. I don't think they were just chatting.
You don't think so?
No. They may have been a little distracted.
Could have been.
And we don't know the car was, the engine was on.
Yeah.
Pulled in, icy roads.
Yeah.
On and on. 1,000 details, as my colleague Gary says. Everyone's different.
Well, every single situation is different. A perfect example is the video that we all saw of the guy in the Range Rover and the couple hundred motorcycles that he was dealing with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. He did what we told him to do, which was right, drive away, but then he got in traffic again, and now what?
Honestly, he shouldn't have let off the throttle. Just my personal opinion. I've seen that video. I wouldn't have blamed the guy if he would. That Range Rover has the capability of climbing over both motorcycles and the riders thereof. I would have.
No, it was cars. He got into a car traffic jam.
And that Range Rover would have easily jumped the curb and drove on the sidewalk. Easily.
No, Paul, you didn't watch the video because there were cement barriers on both sides. There was no place for him to go. It was lots of cars at the tail end of that video. He went over the motorcycles, he went over riders, and then he got into a situation that I don't know. I don't think he could have gotten a semi through there except on a slow crawl because it was he was bad. It was backed up. He had nowhere to go. get a car. So
Let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Justin Schilling of Centuria, Wisconsin, was sleeping in his bed early New Year's morning. He woke up to hear somebody pounding on his door. As he approached the door, Derek Amoroso kicked the door in and entered the home. Schilling was already armed and told Amoroso to leave. Amoroso then attacked the homeowner. Schilling shot his attacker once in the leg and groin area. That's going to leave a mark. Police found Amoroso lying on the kitchen floor. EMTs transported him to a local hospital where he's now listed in stable condition. Police said the homeowner is not expected to face charges in the shooting. What that brought to mind for me is you all have heard of the Darwin Awards. I wonder if that was a good enough shot that this guy might be a Darwin Award winner. Maybe he got the family jewels taken out in the process.
Right. You are, for those of us that are don't read broadly, the Darwin Award is granted to someone who removes themselves from the gene pool.
Right.
Often it's posthumous, but it needn't be.
No, it does not have to be posthumous.
well, I'm sorry, teaching moment.
Yes.
Someone's
Senator
pounding
Bass?
on your door New Year's Eve or any time after midnight that you're not expecting. Don't go down there. Bunker in, call the police, and stay in a safe room. Get everybody together in a safe room behind, a bookcase loaded with books, behind whatever the heaviest thing you have that might block some bullets, and stay there. Don't go down.
Well,
Why?
Amoroso kicked in the door, Gary. How would this change?
The homeowner is upstairs or in his bedroom with another door closed, with his gun trained on the door, and he's calling the police, not downstairs having a chit-chat fight with the guy.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, Gary, but I do understand where you're coming from, and you're technically right, but that's an awful lot to ask. I don't know that I could do that.
Something to look forward to.
I made a horrible mistake 2 years ago in the winter before I went to Mag 40. I heard a bunch of loud noises in the house. I went investigating in my robe with a handgun, and then got to Mag 40, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Ayub, the expert, is this what I should have done?" "No, don't go hunting in your house. Call the police. Bunker in." That's all I'm saying.
I understand.
I know it's hard. I agree.
I'm not. If somebody's knocking on my door, well, this says pounding, but I'm going to go to the door to find out what they want. I'm not. I may not open it, but I'm going to find out what they want. I may even say I've got the police on the phone, but I cannot fault this guy for the guy kicking in the door. He's armed. It's up.
Okay. I've seen a video, and I'm not sure who put it on. It's got Massad Ayub. He's at one of the shoot house training courses, and they play this scenario out. "Hey, my car broke down." "Cool. Great. I'll call do you have AAA? Would you like me to call the police to help you? You don't need to open the door."
Right.
And what is he doing in that video?
He's about 10 feet from the door and behind a wall.
And backing away from the door.
He's not within grabbing distance of the door.
Right, and that's broad daylight. This is not early New Year's morning when he's not expecting people at his house.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
All right, Rob, what's the next one, man?
For our next DGU, unfortunately, we've reported stories like this before. 38-year-old William Bloomer got drunk at a party near Beaumont, Texas. He left the party on foot to go see a friend he thought lived nearby. Bloomer broke into a house nearby, and the homeowner shot him. Bloomer died of his gunshot wounds. The Orange County Sheriff's Department has not filed any charges against the homeowner.
Yeah, I remember. This is not even the second time that we've reported stories like this. This is at least the third time.
This was used as an example, actually, in one of my training courses, where somebody said, this is why you might want to consider not using castle doctrine. If you've got a drunk stumbling in the front, can you and your family back out the back? Because you may be within your rights, but congratulations, you just bagged a drunk idiot.
Yeah, I'm going to be contrarian on that one again.
All right,
because
please, because
we've had a story. I remember reporting on a story before. I believe it wasn't even a California story. If I'm remembering right, it's in the Oakland area. Guy was doing just that. Called the police. Guy's trying to beat in the door. Called the police. Okay, the guy's about to get in. I'm going out the back. The guy gets shot going out the back because the police think he's the bad guy.
No, I'm going to stick with it. You can't defend yourself against stupid cops that are trigger happy. I mean, they're ones where, hi, I've got the robber. He's sitting on the floor. I've got him held at gunpoint. This is what I'm wearing, and the cops shoot the wrong guy. I'm still going to. Okay, you and I can agree to disagree.
Sure.
If I can, I'd like not to shoot somebody.
Oh, if I can, me too. Me too.
And if I plan to get blind drunk, I better tie my shoelaces together. My God.
Well, our next story of defensive gun use is from Katy, Texas, and was sent in by listener Scott. An armed robber walked into a fireworks stand on New Year's Eve. The getaway driver waited in the car. The robber demanded money from the employee working in the stand. The employee tried to talk the robber out of the robbery, and then he shot the robber 4 times. The getaway driver fled the scene. The robber was flown to a local hospital and is listed in critical condition. Police think these 2 Hispanic robbers had hit several other businesses in the last few days. Thank you for sending that in, Scott.
I like that story because, well, for the same reason I like the next one. I'll save my comments for there. 24-year-old Wendell Giles was out on parole. His parole officer wanted to see him for his parole violations. The police wanted to find Giles because he was a suspect in 8 burglaries in the North Little Rock area. A homeowner heard someone enter his home early Monday morning. The homeowner called the police and grabbed his rifle. The homeowner aimed the rifle at the intruder's head, and the gun didn't fire because the homeowner had forgotten to take off the safety. Giles heard the homeowner and fled the scene. He was arrested by police a short distance away. Giles was not armed when he was arrested for 9 burglaries.
Wow.
People that are able to defend themselves and call the police save society untold violence and havoc. Whether it's a man in Katy, Texas, somebody in Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you for defending yourselves and for defending all of us.
One thing that came to mind with this most recent story about the parolee, if you're going to have a weapon that you're going to use for self-defense, know that weapon and know it very well. Forgetting to take the safety off, man, if conditions, luck, it worked out for the gun owner, and that's a good thing. And it worked out even better for the guy that was arrested, because he was arrested without physical injuries, and he was arrested and not buried. But if you're going to own a gun for defensive purposes, please practice with it, please dry fire with it, and know it.
Well, Gary, I've heard this described both ways. One is, the homeowner can stay in the dark, and the alternative is, and we've had DGUs where the homeowners have made all kinds of noise, turned on lights, and the idiots break in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes get shot the way they deserve. In this case, it's hard for me to second guess the homeowner. If he felt threatened, great, stay in the dark. If he wanted to try and repel the robbery, turning on the lights isn't a bad place to start.
I liken that to the pump a shotgun pump. That noise will scare them off. Look, these guys are walking into a house at night. They're fired up. It's very rare that they're scared away by a sound, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I've heard lots of stories.
But just, are they looking for a cold burglary or a hot burglary? Yeah, that's the only difference.
That brings to mind about this time last year. It was very early in the year in Detroit. It happened to be caught on video. Single. Well, I don't know if she was a single mom, but dad was not home. 3 hoodlums go to break in the door. They get in. She points a high-point carbine at them and says, "I've got a gun." They say, "You're not going to use it." She pops off a round or two, and they go screaming out the back. They think about coming back until she shows up back at the door with the carbine, and they then decided it really is time to go. If it's, I'm kind of torn on this. Yeah, if they're looking for a cold burglary, you let them know you're there, whether it be by turning the light on, screaming, whatever. Yeah, they're going to go away. If it's a hot burglary, they're going to come in anyway. But I don't think the only harm I can see in a hot burglary situation of letting them know you're there is they know not only that you're there, but where you are. That's the only drawback I see. Our next DGU, we actually covered this one on the show that I haven't got edited yet, but I do want Rob and John to comment on it, so we're going to go ahead and do it again. A gun store owner got a call from his alarm company. The front door was smashed and several guns were missing from his Youngsville, Louisiana store when he arrived. Video surveillance showed the thieves breaking into the store, breaking the display cases. The store owner boarded up the store and went home. The alarm sounded again a few hours later, and the store owner returned to find 2 men sitting in a car in front of his shop. They drove toward him, they struck him and the front of his store with their car. The driver then pointed a gun at the store owner. That is when the store owner drew and fired. Police found the vehicle a few streets away. Both the driver and the passenger were hit. The driver was dead, and the passenger required urgent medical attention after his arrest. The vehicle used by thieves was stolen, and police found firearms in the vehicle that weren't taken from the Youngsville gun shop and came from other recent burglaries. A little bit more information than we had on the New Year's Eve show. So what's your take, guys?
Maybe the store owner was surprised, but it sounds like he waited till the last minute to defend himself.
Yeah, after he was hit, the way this is written, after he was hit, he drew his gun. I'm thinking, knowing what I know about vehicles, I wouldn't be waiting that long.
Wait a minute. Knowing what I know about gun store owners, his gun was already out, and he had to go back a second time for an alarm call in the same night. I think they just...
I'm betting his hand was on the firearm.
What?
Wouldn't you bet that his hand is on the firearm?
I would have, yeah. Knowing the gun store owners that I know, yeah, definitely. I think they just screamed up on him with the car. I mean, yeah, we don't know the stuff, but they hit him. So I don't know.
Well, I remember a similar story coming, I think, out of South Carolina, where they used a car to break into the front of the gun store. The owner lived in an adjacent apartment. He came out while they were in the middle of the burglary. He was armed with an AR, and he eventually, he engaged in gunfire with them. And then after the fact, he's like, "Oh crap! I only had my one magazine."
Right. Right.
And if it's a stolen car, what do you care if it gets dented? If you use it to, break in the
front of a gun store.
break in the front of the, through the barred windows or whatever.
Yeah.
This next DGU is from Champaign, Illinois. Clayton Dial, age 23, needed money to pay his drug dealer. He thought the Kamakura sushi restaurant in Champaign, Illinois would be the place to collect that money, at least this past Tuesday. Dial thought wrong. After he pulled out what appeared to be a revolver and demanded cash from the hostess, sushi chef Tetsui Miwa, sushi chef Tetsui Miwa grabbed his sushi knife and went on the offensive. He grabbed Dial by the shoulders. He demanded to know what he wanted. Then the robber saw the knife and started running. Miwa and two other managers finally subdued Dial in the parking lot and held him until police arrived. The revolver, air quotes here on revolver, this is newspaper reporting, right? The revolver turned out to be a pellet gun. Miwa said later that he didn't really want to use a sushi knife, but would have if it was absolutely necessary. The knife's pretty expensive, so I didn't want to damage it or use it. I was telling him, don't make me use this. As soon as the other two managers came out, I set the knife down to the ground very carefully because I didn't want to damage my blade. Dial is now in the county jail under a $100,000 bond and charged with attempted aggravated robbery, intimidation, and aggravated battery.
That robber's lucky because those knives are incredibly sharp.
Oh, yeah.
And a guy who uses it hours on hours on hours every day.
Yeah. I will cut you is pretty much what he can say.
Yes.
I read this story, and what was even more interesting is as the fight's going on in the parking lot, here comes this guy who turns out to be the local judge, watches the whole thing. And he's like, And he was just coming to pick up his sushi order.
And he goes, "Oh, I understand you've just been robbed. Yeah, forget my order." They go, "No, we want to serve you."
Yeah.
Wow. Good for them.
Yeah, I don't think it was the hostess. I think it was somebody else inside who came over, and the guys were banging on the gunman's hand to get him to let go of the pellet gun.
Mm-hmm.
But then somebody came and kicked it away because they didn't want to, have it within reach. On the other hand, they treated knife very gently because they didn't want to nick the blade.
Wow. I wonder, it says his knife is expensive. I wonder how expensive is.
Huh. Good question, but I've seen those knife sets. A home set is not cheap, so any commercial knife has got to be up there.
I would imagine it wasn't made by Ginsu. All right, well, I do want to remind everybody that we do have links for each of our news and defensive gun use articles at PoliteSocietyPodcast.com. Please go look at them and share them with a friend, and also tell your friends to listen to the show. We're going to go ahead and step aside here. When we come back is our email segment, and we will get to that right after this.
Holy shit!
What?
I just Googled sushi knife.
Yeah?
$350, $1,449.
Oh!
$99 and $2,699 are the top things that come up on Google.
$26.99. I could get a pair of really damn good ARs for that.
I'm going to take a quick bio break. I'll be right back.
Wow. Oh, God. Hey, I'm going to grab some water. Hold on.
Rob, did you ever get your invitation for a media day at the range?
Nope.
Crap.
All I got was this. Well, they did that to me last time, Paul. It showed up 2 days after I got there.
Oh.
So I'll just walk in and I'm not getting there till Tuesday noon.
Okay. I'll be getting in on Sunday, so.
I'm back. Sorry.
Wait for Gary to put his earpieces back in. Get the earrings all settled there, Gary.
Oh. Well, I have to catch my breath because I just walked 10 feet. So, Sherry just texted me. I don't get a sushi knife for my birthday.
All right. I'm just looking over because we had a bunch of email. Man, it's feast or famine. We had like 5 or 6 emails on the New Year's Eve show.
They like you more than they like us.
We're all good in those. So, and nobody got I didn't get any. I mean, I haven't even gotten a personal email for reading on the show. So.
Mm-mm.
Oh! Goodness! I just popped over to the live page. I very much apologize to everybody. Let's see here. Anonymous 1268 has written several. I can tell you for sure my girls fart as much as I do. So did Mossad say how many times some call the cops before they either arrest the caller or just don't show up? I don't remember that from when I went through Mag 40.
Well, like I said, I brought it up in class.
Right.
I had this situation, and my NRA training counselor said, "Don't go hunting in your house." This was pre-concealed carry, obviously. So, and then like I said, I brought it up with Mossad and the guys from I can't remember, whatever the training group that was sponsoring it, and he said, and they said it's hard, but we don't recommend you do it. Don't go hunting in your house. So,
Right.
And they go, we know it's hard. Everybody wants to be macho, but don't. So.
And then one more comment was, I am with you for the use of non-lethal force is more than preferred, is the other comment that he put. So.
I've been involved in some house clearing drills, and you work through doorways and around obstacles in IDPA. In the dark, if there's somebody else out there with a gun, good grief, it's hard to move. I mean, the cops will routinely say, heck with this, send in the dog. I understand why. If you think there's a gun barrel pointed back at you, you don't want to stick your head around the corner.
No, and it's extremely difficult. There is a way, and if you want to know it, go to Kathy Jackson's class. She's the one that taught it to me. There is a way you can present your firearm while giving an extremely tiny target and not exposing very much of yourself at all. But I'm not going to give it out over the air. You got to go to Kathy Jackson's class to get it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't want to. It's for me. It would be absolute last ditch effort. The police aren't going to make it before I clear my own house.
Yeah. Now, if there are kids down the corner, down at the other side of the house, yeah, you and I are going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
100%.
But knowing a little bit of training will get rid of a lot of bravado.
The way our house is set up, where the office is, and where the bedroom is are the opposite sides of entry door.
Oh, okay.
And so if Susan's in the office and I'm in the bedroom and somebody comes in, I'm coming out of the bedroom.
Yeah.
So.
No, right. No, and 100%. I'm not advocating leaving anybody. I'm saying get everybody in one room and bunker in together. I mean, you've been here, Paul. I'm searching a 5,000 square foot house, and what did I do? I left Sherry alone, and that's just dumb. I don't care how you slice it.
All right, and the other thing that brought to mind when I was talking about that just now, and Susan and I haven't worked on it yet. I want to get her through some basic training before we do. Is I thought, somebody comes in, Susan's in the office, I'm in the bedroom. When I come out of the bedroom, I'm facing the office. She's going to be facing me if she's going towards the entry door. Boy, that's a crossfire situation. So that just came to my head.
Sure.
But anyway, let's go ahead and kick off into the email and show close. John, you haven't brought us back in yet. You want to bring us in?
Sure. In 5.
Dude, hold on. You hold your 5. Tim just posted on the live page. Tim Shao.
Yeah.
He's the Anon.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So he just wanted to say no problem.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
All right. We don't have any emails, so just kick blogs back and forth between yourselves, I guess.
I have nothing on the blog.
Oh, okay.
That's why we erased it there, buddy.
Goodness. Then what are we going to talk about? I'm just going to beg for emails.
We're going to say goodbye.
All right. Beg for emails, and you know what? Let me bring us back in because I want to do something a little different here. Back in 5. Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society Podcast. This is where we normally read the listener emails. We had a bunch of them on 298, not so many on 299. It's not so many equals 0. So please keep them coming in. I do love greeting them on the air. We love interacting with the listeners, and I want to mention a couple things. Number one, obviously, episode 299, it would have been very cool. We tried to get together with Glenn Tate to get him on the show. Scheduling would not allow it, and so rather than I had a thought of just holding the episode 299 and making this episode 300, but and then coming back with 299 at a later time. But we'll just go ahead and make this 299. And then one other thing, we've been making a big deal about joining your local and state groups. Now, we normally have a pre-recorded promo that runs, but I do want to run through these. We're going to skip that this time. I want to run through some of these that we list on our every show note we have that's up on our website. These are listed. Most episodes that promo runs, unless I just run out of time, but I want to make sure it gets on this episode. So some of the local groups we have on our website that run every show: New Jersey Second Amendment Society, Arizona Citizens Defense League, Gun Owners of California, Commonwealth Second Amendment, Connecticut Citizens Defense League, Florida Carry, Georgia Carry, Georgia Gun Owners, Grassroots North Carolina, Illinois Carry, Maryland Shall Issue, Michigan Gun Owners, Michigan Open Carry, and Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. I'm running out of breath. Somebody else take it from there.
There's also the Minnesota Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance, the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association, Citizens for a Safer New Jersey, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Palmetto Concealed Carry, Open Carry Texas, Texas Firearms Freedom, Texas State Rifle Association, Tennessee Firearms Association, Virginia Citizens Defense League, Virginia Open Carry, the West Virginia Citizens Defense League, WisconsinGunOwners.org, and Wyoming Gun Owners.
For our Canadian listeners and their supporters, join the Canadian Shooting Sports Association and the Canadian National Firearms Association. If your state or local organization isn't read each episode, please send us an email and we'll add them.
And
oops.
Well, that kind of was an interesting exit.
Oh, there he's coming back. Turn your camera off, Paul. There he is.
Coalition. I'd like to thank John Pierce for joining us today. That was a great conversation we had. Rob, John, I'm guessing you guys are going to be here for the Wednesday show?
I will.
As far as I know, I will be here on Wednesday.
Okay. Gary, I think from our conversation earlier, you probably won't be here for the Wednesday show, but we'll be back next weekend, right?
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
All right. I am as well. So until the next episode, everybody, stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
I stepped on you, Rob. I'm sorry.
I was concerned that if you're pulling the audio off Google Hangout, it came in the middle of John
are you
Pierce.
running a recorder, Paul?
I do not have a recorder with me. No, I'm going to have to pull the YouTube audio.
Then you got to. Then start over. That wraps up another episode.
Okay.
Because you had dropped out.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah, because there was a lot of stuff you said that was missing. So.
A lot of stuff I said from about where? From that wraps up? Is that where it's missing?
Yeah. Were you talking about some other things? I heard you mention a group, and I'm sure you mentioned John, but it seemed like it was a good 30 seconds. So I don't know. It seemed like there was a lot missing.
All right. Well, here we go. Let me kick it in again.
Okay.
Well, that does wrap it up.
Maybe not.
Maybe it doesn't. Exactly. Well, that does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. I'd like to thank John Pierce for joining us today. That was a fascinating conversation we had with him. Rob and John, I'm guessing you guys will be here for the midweek show. Rob, you going to be here?
I will.
John, how about you, man?
I hope to be.
Very cool. Gary, I'm guessing from our earlier conversation, you're going to miss the midweek, but you'll be back next weekend, right?
I will absolutely be back next weekend. Looking forward to it.
All right. So am I. Well, that does do it then. Until the next time, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
Oh, good God. I cannot talk when I'm in the truck. All right. Before we take off, I do again want to thank our sponsors, ABN Army Surplus, Firearms Policy Coalition, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, and Firearms Safety Institute.
And speaking of that, quick thank you to John for the student referral. Haven't heard from her yet, but he called me today, so thank you. I know he's watching. I'm just saying thank you.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, live viewers, we're going to go ahead and shut her down here and maybe look for us on a Wednesday show again next week. I may be able to make it home, and we'll do this. If I'm home, we'll do it over Google Hangouts. If I'm not, they will do it over Skype. So join us next weekend and maybe on Wednesday as well. Thanks, everybody.